Hello everyone, it's another video featuring our favourite leftist YouTube channel, Novara Media. Though this time we don't have the very annoying Michael Walker hosting it for us, instead this time we have Haryan Bastani talking to the man, the myth, the legend of lacking all self-awareness, Hasan Piker. And it's an interview, so it's over an hour long, and I thought, bit too long to do a response video, I think, but then I listened to just the first few sentences in the introduction and thought, okay, I'm going to do this in a few parts.
What do you think of Nancy Pelosi?
I despise her.
She's 82, right?
Yeah, I think...
Is she going to be there till she's like 100?
I mean...
People say you're being ageist, though I think that's...
No, I am. I'm so ageist. I'm ageist and ableist when it comes to politicians.
Already, it's hilarious because Hasan Piker, lacking self-awareness as he does, doesn't realise that some of his favourite politicians are in the same age group as Nancy Pelosi. Now, I am personally on his hating Nancy Pelosi side, but you'd think surely he realises that his favourite politician who he constantly wants in and constantly says the Democrats keep pushing him out, Bernie Sanders, is only 1 year younger than Nancy Pelosi. Like, I get he's doing a bit, I just think he can be a bit more self-aware about what he's saying.
It's like, not ableist in the sense that, like, you know, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't be a politician. Obviously, I don't believe that. But, like...
Well, thank God for that, because I imagine one of his favourite presidents would be FDR, who was stuck in a wheelchair.
If you have, like, you know, Alzheimer's or dementia, like, you shouldn't be a politician. If you can't drive, you shouldn't be a politician. It's fucking insane to me.
These are such strange bars for what you'd want as a president or a politician or anything like that. Because he goes from, if you're in a wheelchair, like, obviously you should be able to go into office, but then if you can't drive a car, okay, that's a bit odd. A lot of people can't drive cars for a multitude of reasons. And then he goes on to say if you have Alzheimer's or dementia, you shouldn't be a politician. Well, your president appears to have early stage Alzheimer's, so, you know, maybe kick up a fuss about that. But yes, after watching that, I thought I could do this entire video, because if that's the level of Hasan and Aaron's political analysis that we're going to get from here, I can easily make this into a little mini-series. So I've decided to basically just let the rest of the podcast go on, and I will be giving fresh reactions to every single stupid thing that these people are going to say. Do enjoy, and obviously watch out for the next parts, which I imagine will be coming out in the coming weeks. So Aaron, take it away.
There's been a great deal of talk about the reinvigoration of the American left since Bernie Sanders first ran the Democratic nomination in 2016.
Oh, and unfortunately for Hasan Piker, he's too old, so yeah, it's a shame, but he won't be able to run again. But yes, I think I'd hate to be a non-self-aware American leftist than a non-self-aware American rightist at the moment. Because non-self-aware American leftists, as we will see from Hasan Piker, know literally next to nothing about any goings-on in the world. I mean, you want to see a compilation of brain-dead takes from Hasan Piker, just go to Mauler's channel, Mauler's second channel even, Mueller, and find the video where Hasan Piker gives his god-awful takes from over the years. I think my personal favourite is the one where he said Hitler wasn't bad because he invaded other Germanic countries. He was bad because he was committing the Holocaust, despite the fact that the Holocaust only started to get its plans into motion way into the war. And he finishes off that thought with, I think. Unironically, that's what he says in it. But I will leave you to try and find that on your own. It's well worth it.
That's also true in the media. Nowhere more so than with the rise of Hasan Piker at Hasan Arby, who is a rarity.
I wouldn't say he's a rarity. He is a leftist streamer who games sometimes. That's pretty much what every leftist streamer does. It's not rare, it's literally one of the most popular things you can do on Twitch. Assuming you have decent charisma and can make jokes, which Hasan Piker can, Vorsh can. It's just a shame that they're so brain dead and probably ruining the education of a bunch of young adults, but here we are.
In that he uses Twitch not just for video games, but also for politics and current affairs. I caught up with Hasan to talk about a range of things, from his West Hollywood home to who he thinks will inhabit the White House after 2024.
Oh, I cannot wait for him to defend that $5 million house again. And I cannot wait for his brain-dead predictions. His prediction might be right as well. I just want to hear the explanation behind it, because I know it's going to be mental.
What's it like to be the world's most famous political Twitch streamer?
It's terrible. It's just absolutely terrible.
See, responses like this are where Hasan has a lot of followers. He is quite self-deprecating, and he can actually be quite funny, even self-aware funny. But I think we're going to get in trouble later because we're going to see Hasan full-on go thinking mode, and when that happens, he'll leave massive gaps between words while he's thinking, because it's not like Jordan Peterson, where Jordan Peterson will be thinking of entire sentences in his head. Hasan Piker will forget the word cook and then spend about 5 seconds thinking about the word to then say it in the middle of a sentence that he's already forgotten why he's talking about what he's talking about.
No one in the realm of politics knows what Twitch is, so there's no way that you can describe that to someone.
What do you mean? I do streams all the time, and I explain to people all the time what streams are. It is basically just like a talk radio show, except it's on demand and it's on a particular website, and there's video to go with it if people want to see what you're doing. How is that hard to describe to people in politics? What the hell?
When I met with the Surgeon General a couple weeks ago, maybe like a month or so ago, and the only reason why I was able to do that was because someone in his team on the publicity side was a fan of mine, but like a huge fan of mine.
This, by the way, is where Hasan's true influence actually lies. He makes millions of dollars a year on his Twitch channel, and he has millions and millions of viewers every day. It's probably closer to hundreds of thousands of viewers every day, but, you know, whatever. He has a big audience. People in those audiences will inevitably know people. They'll be in low-level jobs because they'll be young adults. But even here, the Surgeon General, he has someone working for him who is a massive Hasan Piker fan, and obviously that guy's using his influence with the Surgeon General to set up a meeting. And that's then where Hasan's massive influence comes in. And this is why I talk about him a lot, because we have an absolute moron like this who is so pro-socialism it makes my eyes hurt, and he is able to influence politicians throughout the American left-wing establishment. You know, he's not just a nobody who talks to a void on Twitch, and YouTube, of course, because of his highlight channel. No, he actually does have influence, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of things being put forward by Democrats in, say, I don't know, at the local level at the moment, you know, New York, especially California, because that's where he lives, a lot of that will probably be influenced by him to some degree. Whether he knows it or not, I mean, he's so lazy he probably wouldn't even realise. But there'll be people working in government who are fans of Hasan and will listen to him in the background when they're doing their emails, or what have you, and because of that, he actually has a lot more influence than you'd think in American politics. Anyway, Hasan goes on to say why he was meeting the Surgeon General.
To talk to them about mental health and, you know, how important it is to destigmatize it. And of course, like, obviously destigmatizing mental health and like seeking therapy is a good thing, overall healthy. But I think in the United States of America, we have a much more prescient, much more important hurdle to overcome with respect to mental health treatment. And that is, of course, you know, affordability.
And this is a huge example of Hasan Piker being completely unself-aware. Now, I don't care that he's rich, and I'm not saying that he should give his money to people who can't afford healthcare. That's not what I'm going to say here. What I am going to say is that this is just completely feigning interest in an issue that he is actively causing issues for. For instance, this was Hasan Abi's reaction to a trans person saying he probably shouldn't debate anti-trans people on the basis that he clearly doesn't know enough.
For the record, my issue as a trans person is the fact that you, a guy that isn't super well versed on trans shit, brought on a known transphobe knowing he might bring up transphobic shit. You aren't exactly a Vosh at trans debates. I hope that the rest of your life is as horrible as it is every single day, okay? Suck my dick. I despise you. I despise you more than anything else on the planet.
Jesus.
You are fucking cancer, okay? You are cancer in this community, and you're cancer in every community. Suck my dick. For the past 15 months, you've been able to fucking hide in these ranks. You catboy fuck. Move your catboy ass out of here. You are never welcome.
Yeah, you know what? I am going to link the Moolah video in because that's directly where it comes from. Hence, Destiny was overlaid there. But as you can see, Hasan Piker does not give any cares about mental health issues in America at all. He'd rather just tell people with mental health issues that he hopes that their lives get worse. He really is one of the worst people on the planet.
I was there, and this publicist in the middle of everyone's like, this is Hasan, like, he's got thousands of, you know, he has hundreds of thousands of people watching him every day. It's like he speaks to the youth, and everyone's just like looking at me like, what is this dude doing? Everyone's like wearing suits. Surgeon General has to wear, because he's an admiral technically, he has to wear like, you know, military gear. And I'm just sitting there with a t-shirt. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all that Hasan is way in over his head when it comes to actual professional politicians who are trying to find actual practical answers to the issues of the day. So I'd be interested to see what Aaron's further questions are on his political works, because they are basically non-existent outside of calling people retards on Twitch.
So it's weird because no one in the political realm is aware of Twitch. And then for the most part, no one else does like politics in that space either. There's not a lot of like political commentary on that front.
It's absolutely crazy to me that he claims that, considering that Bastani streams on Twitch. I mean, he streams on everything and does political commentary. Vorsh streams on Twitch and does a load of political commentary. And Hasan has the biggest, I think, Twitch channel on there. I just think he doesn't know about the lower levels of political commentary on Twitch, because I don't think he knows about anyone else apart from people who actually actively try and contact him, and even then he probably ignores the emails, because loads of Twitch streamers who are politically engaged, they all try and move to LA, and the reason for that is because Hasan Piker's there, and they're always constantly trying to get like meetups done and collaborations and things like that done, and he rarely does it with anyone apart from people Hasan already knows, because I don't think Hasan's ever done anything with Vorsh, and I think they've had some bad blood because of that, but it's just so hilarious. Hasan is basically just a lazy man, but he's causing so many issues just because of his laziness. It is actually quite funny. And if Hasan is actually the representation, the peak of what Twitch politics can be, I reckon that a lot of politicians actually know what Twitch is and are just trying to be polite to him and being like, oh no, I've never heard of it, when really they're like, please go away. You're an embarrassment to the left wing.
So you're an outsider in two worlds.
Yeah. But I mean, I make it work. I like it. I enjoy it. And it's not, I don't just do politics either. You know, I'm here in London. I'm not only doing interviews with you guys, but I'm also going to go and like hang out with some other, you know, Minecrafters and go to chicken shops. And
see what I mean by lazy? He'll come all the way over to London as a political activist and do one interview with one alternative media magazine, which is Novara Media, and the rest of the time it's like, yeah, I'm gonna see a load of Minecrafters and you go to chicken shops, which is a really weird thing to want to do in London. Which is fine, he can do what he wants, I've not got an issue with that. It's just really weird to describe him as a political pundit or a political commentator when I think he actually spends less than half his time doing that. And then when he does make the effort to leave his $5 million home, it is to basically go on holiday or have a bunch of politicians not really understand who he is, and then for him to act like a complete outsider and not try and fit in and do any actual political activism. It is just pure laziness, which is fine. I just wish that he wasn't as popular as he is, but people on Twitch are apparently idiots.
Why did you choose to use Twitch? Because you started in 2018, right?
so
While you're still at TYT, we'll get to that in
Yeah.
a moment. But why do you choose Twitch and not YouTube or Facebook Live?
Especially because quite a lot of streamers actually try and spread it out to more than just one place to live stream. For instance, the Lotus Eaters stream to about 6 platforms. I think they stream on Rumble, Facebook Live, Getter I think they stream on as well. They have a load of options and spread it about, which is a really good idea. And I think Destiny also streams on both Twitch and YouTube, and I know a few chess streamers who do both as well. So it is a bit weird, and I genuinely, I think it's just going to come down to laziness, but I want to see what he says.
So I already had a presence on Facebook. I was managing TYT's Facebook operations, and I was making this show called The Breakdown on there. And it was pre-scripted. It was a green screen show. It was pre-scripted, heavy on the asset side, which was pretty good for the time. But I was really bad off the cuff. I could not speak off the cuff to save my life.
Well, there you go. Some things never change. But to be fair to him, he's not as bad as he usually is on Twitch here. But I reckon that's because there's not so many distractions, because he usually has 3 screens in front of him, and I think he just gets distracted easily. But here he's actually not waiting between words too much, so maybe he just has ADHD or something, I don't know. But it is strange to say, yeah, I'm not very good speaking off the cuff, so I decided to stream where I have to constantly talk off the cuff.
And I wanted to get better at that. So I thought, and I also wanted a space for myself. I wanted a space where I could just go to every day, like build a community for myself, rather than be under the umbrella of TYT. And I knew that Twitch had a lot of gamers who I thought were not necessarily getting the best representation of the left, because at the time, between like 2016 all the way to like even 2019, the gaming space and YouTube especially was polluted by alt-right and alt-light and, you know, right-wing reactionary video game essayists.
Where? I'm sorry, but I am trying to wrap my head around it. I know Gamergate was a big thing, and post 2016, the only people who were really gaming and giving out massive video essays, the only ones I can think of around 2016 was, you know, probably Mauler, but even he's not political. Like, if you mentioned Gamergate, fair enough, but the thing with Gamergate is that it was a load of leftist journalists who were just calling them all racist, and Hasan's jumped right into that and apparently said, oh, you know what, I'm going to be a left-wing gamer, talking explicitly about politics, and all that's ended up with is people realising that he's a moron, and not only a moron, but someone who has no issues basically telling trans people to kill themselves, which is something you very rarely see anyone on the right wing do. The only person I can think of who said anything like that would be Nick Fuentes, but I mean, at least with Nick, he sounds like he's making a joke about it. Hasan genuinely sounded like he had pure contempt for that trans person.
That would really do a good job propagandizing right-wing talking points that basically took you down this pipeline all the way to like actual white nationalist and white supremacist content creators, right?
Yes, the old gamer to right-wing pipeline, which there's never been any good evidence to suggest that that actually exists, but Hasan Piker clearly has stated here that he'd rather have one that leaves a pipeline directly to the left, which causes people to be communists. Whereas I just want to live in a world where politics literally just doesn't matter that much. I want to live in a community where I don't have to worry about who's in number 10 or who's in the White House. But unfortunately, we all seem to have to live in fascist states where it does matter constantly who is my leader. And I'm constantly being repressed by massive inflation and huge tax rises, which hopefully soon, because it does matter, as I say, the person in number 10 will start cutting Liz Truss.
And there was no such counter to that on the left, I thought.
It's absolutely nuts to me that he'd say that. You have Sean and Jen, you had H Bomber Guy, and they're the two biggest ones I can think off the top of my head. You obviously had gamers plus left-wing political essayist. And in fact, I think there were a lot more of them than the right-wingers. I don't think Hasan could actually pick out a single right-wing person apart from maybe Sargon of Akkad. But that's the only person I think he could think of off the top of his head who was a right-wing gamer bro video essayist making right-leaning videos, which he didn't even make at the time because he was still for minimum wage. And even now I don't think you can name a single right-wing YouTuber, especially one that streams regularly to Twitch. But hey, this is his story, but he's been known to take other people's stories and make them his own, like Destiny.
And I'm, you know, I look the way I do, I speak the way I do. I'm not like, I don't think I'm the regular like liberal or leftist figure that you are used to in the media at the time.
Well, the whole point of the alternative media is that you are not like the mainstream media. But he was just talking about Twitch gamers who aren't left-wing. He didn't think there were enough of them. Why is he now talking about typical mainstream media?
So I think I'm going to show a different perspective that like you can be leftist and still make jokes and still have fun and play video games, which is something I like to do. So the combination of those three factors made me want to go on Twitch.
He says this like there aren't thousands of reaction gifs of H Bomber Guy. Like, I think I kind of get what he means when he says, you know, there's this whole view from the right wing that if you're woke or leftist, then you can't make any sort of joke that is offensive to any sort of minority group or to women or to trans people, whatever. But then when he was going off on one on his stream about Jay because he stole his content, he had absolutely no remorse whatsoever, and in fact just kept having a go at him. But then people in chat were, well, you can't misgender him because Jay goes by all pronouns at the moment. But he didn't know that, and someone was saying, oh, Jay goes by she, her, and he's like, oh, no misgendering in the chat. No misgendering in the chat, you're not allowed to do that. But then we'll basically call Jay a Nazi. And it's like, oh. So you can just make lies about him? Just completely make things up, call him the worst thing you can think of. But my God, you misgender Jay? Oh, that's going to be a ban on Twitch.
I thought there was a group of young men ready for radicalization that had not necessarily seen leftist ideas in a good light. It was everything their interactions with that kind of content was exclusively reactionary video game essayists.
Who? Who do you mean? Because I went through a really long video essay by the Surfs going on about Gamergate, and I don't even think they brought up Sargon of Akkad in that. I think they brought up like Mike Cernovich, Milo Yiannopoulos, and I can't remember anyone else. But they weren't gamers. They just caught up on the Gamergate thing, realised, hey, by the way, the things that's happening to you gamers, that's actually been happening to a lot of people for a long time in America and the UK, and we'd like to make changes for that. But I don't know. When he says right-wing video game essayists, I literally have no idea who he means. And I just want him to name someone. Because if he does mean Sargon of Akkad, that's fine. But if we're naming him, then it should be fair to name H. Bomber Guy or Sean and Jen, because they had comparable audiences and did the same thing as him.
Portraying everyone as like hysterical SJWs or whatever, even though the ideas that those people on the left were correct, in my opinion. They were morally righteous.
Oh, I love that. Oh, they were correct. Oh, wow, that's a hell of a thing to say. Oh, it's only in my opinion. Boom, put the shield down. Can't touch anything he said there, it's just his opinion, it's completely subjective. Even though objectively, absolutely everything that Hasan Piker has pushed for has ended up with misery, and caused majority of countries that have tried the ideas to completely collapse. Well done, Hasan.
Their presentation was not appealing to, especially rudderless young men, specifically young white men too.
It's always a thing they say. It's like, oh, young white men, they're the ones that are at risk of radicalisation. Did they ever ask why? Did they ever look into why it's young white men that are the ones that are most easily radicalised according to them? Because every explanation I see, it's things like, oh, well, they used to be the most privileged in society and that's slowly being taken away from them. They don't like it. When really, they're being failed at every step, especially over here in the UK. Young white boys are the worst performing at school. They are slowly dropping their numbers at university. They've got the highest dropout rates. They've got the highest suicide rates at uni as well, in fact. And do you not think this demographic sees all these issues? And then do you not wonder what's causing all these issues? And then do they not realise it's their own policies and the things they're pushing for that are causing this? Look, you can't change human nature if they realise that they are essentially under attack and that the positive focus is on absolutely every other demographic. Do you not think maybe you should just stop doing the things that's making them do that? Because it'd be nice for them if they can just have a normal life, but that seems to not be allowed. Examples I'll always bring up, I wasn't allowed to apply for BBC jobs because I'm white. Enough people are going to realise that, and enough people are going to get pissed off enough to do something about it, so, think on that.
So you come out of the Young Turks,
Yeah.
and without disparaging them, because they do great work, but would you include the Young Turks in that? Were you working at this really successful left-wing media company and thinking, you know what, there's a big sort of hole in our strategy and our audience acquisition?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
I love how Aaron Bastani thinks that the Young Turks do great work when, especially given the example of the Carl Rittenhouse thing, they just lied about every aspect of what was going on in both that trial and the events in the videos that apparently Anna Kasparian spent hours trawling through to get the whole story. I'm pretty sure the Young Turks were one of the first ones to keep going on about the state lines crossing thing, which just turned out the weapon wasn't crossing state lines. Only Carl Rittenhouse crossed state lines, which, believe it or not, you're allowed to do in America. But really the massive issue with the Young Turks is that they have very unlikable hosts who are very disparaging towards a large number of their audience, who most of which will be white males. And especially post-Trump election, they went way off the rails. And the thing is that Hasan went off, and the thing with Hasan is that he's a lot more relatable, especially to young audiences, because he's a gamer, because he makes edgy jokes, because a lot of people somehow find his reactions funny. I mean, look, some of his reactions are funny, but not for the reason that he thinks. So let's see what he has to say about TYT.
And the Young Turks is a media operation, so they're not they're full-fledged. They have a studio, they have, they had editors, producers. It's not very easy to change direction quickly.
Such a weird thing to say, given how Hasan Piker has done literally the same thing for about 5 years or however long his Twitch has been going. I mean, I kind of get what he's saying. He's saying, oh, well, because they have all these editors and all this work to do, they didn't really have time for me to do what I wanted or have the resources, so I just did it myself, which, fair enough, but don't put it the way of, oh, you can't change direction easily, when for 5 years you haven't changed direction in any regard.
I can do that on my own. So that's the biggest weakness of companies like the Young Turks, in my opinion, is that on the internet you can't be static.
The only thing he's really changed is the fact that he used to stream for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and he had to cut it down to 8 because it was too much for him. And that's basically the only thing that's changed for him over the past few years. He has done less work because he doesn't need to do more because he gets so much money from doing 8 hours anyway.
If it's an off season and there's not a lot of stuff happening in the news, I'm going to shift my attention away to fun stuff that I want to do that will still garner a larger audience and reach out to a broader audience, because like I'm collaborating with other content creators completely outside of the political realm.
Yeah, fair enough. I can see his reasoning behind it there then as well. Because there's been issues with my channel where there've been complete dry spells for weeks with absolutely no news, and I don't know what to do videos about. Luckily, I can always rely on Navarra Media putting out absolute garbage videos for me to react to, so thanks for that.
On top of that, I think TYT is definitely liberal. They're social democrats, which is still unfortunately fairly radical for American politics, but I think it doesn't. I don't think it pushes the envelope to where it needs to go.
I love how he thinks that's really radical for America when basically, LA, California, New York, a load of the coastal metropolitan states, they are full on board with social democrat policy. To the point there now seems to be robberies every day. I mean, the Load Seaters did coverage on it the other day. Just there seems to be a robbery every day, a murder every day, and these criminals seem to be let out constantly because they, social democrats think the justice system's unfair in America, so criminals are just let out for, well, a pittance, no bail over COVID, and I think that's still in effect. So the reason it's radical is because people can see the results of social democrat policy and do not like it. That's why there is a mass exodus from these states to states like Texas and Florida, because they're just better run states.
With respect to long-term goals, or even like an adequate analysis of the reason why there's so much structural inequality.
And this will be where he's talking Bastani's language, because I've read Fully Automated Luxury Communism, and obviously absolutely every issue we have needs to be a systemic or structural problem, so obviously every solution is going to be a structural or societal solution. And don't get me wrong, there are structural issues that we have and all that, but the problem with this radical leftism is that it's only got a hammer, which is a structural analysis, so everything looks like a nail. And also because true leftism has never been tried, these people have just got to ignore the fact that California and New York typically have quite close to what their policy they are after is actually being implemented. It's always capitalism's fault, so it's absolutely pointless for the right wing to try and appease these people in any way, because you're always going to get blamed even when you do exactly what they say, as hopefully the Tories will learn at some point in the next decade.
I believe it's a fundamental part of capitalism. They think capitalism, for the most part, could be repaired with strict government regulation.
I don't know how true that is, but I have to say I have heard Anna and Cenk both say that they are staunch anti-capitalist before, so I have no idea. They really think Hasan, who has earned enough to buy a $5 million mansion, would be totally fine with capitalism, or at least if he isn't, he'd put the money to better use. Alas, he needs a $5 million mansion so that he can live with his mum so that she can cook for him.
Do you think they've become more radical in their sort of diagnosis, or do you think that's more or less where it ends?
I think they've become more radical over the years, for sure.
Thank you, President Donald J. Trump.
Because things are really bad in America. They're really, really bad. So they have gotten more radical over the years. Don't think that they're like anti-capitalist though, because in order to get to the next step, I always feel like you need to do a little bit of reading.
Oh, that's interesting, Hasan. Exactly what would your reading list entail? Please tell me what your reading list is. I can only imagine it's going to be the best of leftist books. And if he says Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, I'm going to cry.
You don't have to.
Great, so no books, and actually you don't need to do a bit of reading to become radicalised. I think the reason he said that is because he's done no reading himself.
You can recognize the inherent class contradictions, but you're not going to be well equipped and armed with the knowledge of like why it happens the way it does without doing a little bit of reading. And if in America, one, we hate reading, and two, you don't get exposure to that kind of material
Now that is just crazy to me. I know people who have done American studies, and for that, that was a university course, by the way. And for a year of that, they did a year in an American university, and I saw the reading list from there. Yeah, no, you are definitely exposed to those types of reading materials. Don't give me anything else. They're hardly being given anything by Rothbard or Friedman, are they? No, it's all these leftists who write about structural inequality, and that's why all of these students who come back from American studies are all insufferably left wing.
And the only exposure you do get is usually negative.
It's just not true. It's just not true at all. Most of the mainstream media is completely on Hasan's side. It's just not radical enough for him. They constantly have panels going on about structural issues in America. What's he talking about?
Anything outside of the realm of neoclassical economics is seen as like theories that are crazy and wacky.
That I do agree with, but the thing is that neoclassical economics, by which he means Keynesian and neo-Keynesian, post-Keynesian even, i.e. the systems we have now, are not that far away from actually what Hasan wants, which is that the government is spending absolutely loads of money putting it into the economy to try and stimulate growth. And I don't even think Hasan could tell you what he wants from an economy, but all I do know is that he wants the government at the forefront of it. So, yeah, they're pretty much on the same side.
So what kind of reading? What are your favourite books? If you have a young kid and they're like, my apologies to anyone who's 17 calling him a young kid, but, you know, a young adult, and they say, look, Hasan, this is totally screwed up. So many people using food stamps. The economy doesn't work. My parents are in debt. I know this isn't how it's meant to be. It could be better, but explain to me, or suggest books which explain to me why this is the way that it is and how we can change it. What would you say to them?
In case you can't tell, Aaron Bastani is really pushing this question because he really wants Hasan Piker to say, oh yes, I read your book, Aaron Bastani. That was probably one of the best that I have read. I'm going into this blind. I have no idea what Hasan is going to say. I think it is going to be a very silly answer.
No, I mean, literally all the classics, everything. Das Kapital is like not an easy read, obviously, but there's summarizations that you can find, especially on the internet, lectures and whatnot on YouTube.
I love it. What are your favourite books? I don't know. Let's just go with Das Kapital. Okay, it's a really long read. All right, fair enough. Just listen to lectures about it. Do that instead. Unbelievable. If you just stuck to saying, oh, but you can find condensed versions of it, that would be fine. I mean, that's what I'd recommend with Wealth of Nations. I read the whole thing, all 700 odd pages of it, however many it is. The Adam Smith Institute have condensed it to about 60 odd pages. I'd recommend that because Adam Smith went on the most pointless tangents I've seen in my life. I would recommend YouTube videos and things like that on these books, but if I'm asked specifically about which books I think people should read, I'm only going to give answers about books I think people should read, not go off and watch YouTube lectures.
Anything from Marx to Lenin, I think is definitely good.
See what I mean by stupid? All he could come up with as a specific example for a book was Das Kapital, one that absolutely, even non-Marxists, even people who aren't politically engaged know exists. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to pick... from Marx to Lenin, why not any non-Marxist writers? Why not something written beyond 1920? Unironically, this is horseshoe theory in action, because the dissident right... They constantly say don't read any books printed after World War II, despite the fact that quite a few people in the dissident right are writing books in 2022. But Hasan Piker, being an absolute moron, has just completely agreed with them. And in fact, to be fair, soon I wouldn't be surprised if the dissident right are basically saying the same things. In fact, they have done. I know people on the dissident right that have suggested reading Lenin. At least with them, there's reason behind what they're saying. The only reason Hasan Piker's picked those names out is because they're famous Marxists. But he's not managed to name any of their books, apart from obviously Das Kapital. So... what the hell?
But if you don't want to broach into that territory so quickly, probably Noam Chomsky is a good starting point to get a deeper understanding of, at the very least, why the media is the way it is. Because I think that's like a good entry point for a lot of people.
Structural issues, all that. Oh, read Noam Chomsky. He talks about the media. And he's just said that he's a good entry point into leftism. Well, the whole point is that someone is at the entry point of leftism, so they don't need to read Noam Chomsky for that.
To slowly but surely understand why you recognize that the media is like kind of lying to you.
This is a part, especially, and I was tempted to cut this out, but I do need to show you examples where he's clearly struggling to answer questions, and this is where he's really starting to put the pauses between the words because he doesn't really know what he's talking about. It's not a great tell for him. He really is bad at speaking off the cuff, but it's not for everyone. That's fine. I mean, I would have done this as a streaming off the cuff, but I'd much prefer to have these little voice clips that I can do and then redo them if I screw them up, because I want this to be very entertaining for everyone to listen to and to be quite relaxing instead of me going, oh, well, Hasan here is, I don't know, doing things like that for 3 hours. Anyway, come on, Hasan, give me a book. Give me a good book, because you've still only said Das Kapital, and even then you said don't read it.
It's not lying. They're just manufacturing consent. But that, I think, is a good way to enter into that realm.
Well, he remembered a book name, but he didn't make it obvious that was the book name, Manufacturing Consent. My God, when you're asked about books, please just give book titles. Because this really, when you actually listen to me, it doesn't make him sound particularly well read. These are blurbs that I could give you, and I have not read anything by Marx or Lenin or Noam Chomsky. Yeah, I could give the exact same answer if I was BSing my way through a socialist interview like Hasan just did.
So you one of the reasons you did Twitch was because you think that white men, young white men, are prey to the far right, and that the left isn't really reaching out to them. Why particularly young white men? Because that's kind of like a verboten thing to say on the left, isn't it? Like young, disenchanted, disenfranchised young white men.
Well, they're finally asking the question, why is it predominantly young white men who are disenfranchised and feel like the system is completely against them? This should be good. Come on, Hasan, give me something.
It's not even just young white men. It's just men in general, I think, on the internet there's not a lot of good positive role models for them out there.
And Hasan is doing his best to do absolutely nothing about that. But why aren't there many good white male role models when all these countries that these young white men are in are majority white male, or majority white, obviously half the population's male. But I really wonder where he's going to go with this.
But it's not just men either. Obviously, everyone is disenfranchised with the system.
But you clearly think that your comparative advantage in the media landscape is reaching out to a certain demographic. I mean, there's no harm saying that, right? So
no, for sure.
Why young men? What's going on with them? If you're like their spokesperson to the wider media, let's say you go to CNN or MSNBC, and like, why are young men so angry? Like, what would your answer be?
I love how he has to reiterate the question because Hasan instantly went to #NotAll. And it's just like, yeah, every demographic feels repressed. It's like, oh, does it? Then why are we constantly talking about, race wars or, gendered wars or things like this? It just completely undermined his own point, and I don't think he actually realised that.
Well, I think that, first of all, let me just mention that obviously I'm not saying that they are the most victimized or anything like that, because there are people out there who will say reactionary things such as that.
I love how his reasoning for saying, I don't want to say that white males are the most victimized in societies because reactionaries say that. I love how he says that instead of because I don't think it's correct. He is literally just a tribal NPC who can be funny. That's all he is, and that seems to be the most popular thing you can be on the internet. I really do hate having self-awareness sometimes. I'd be so rich if I didn't have self-awareness.
I'm simply stating that I recognize that they have a shitty hand dealt as well on top of everyone else, and which is why I oftentimes have a class-first analysis on oppression that then will dovetail into intersectionality.
He just did not all again. It's I've got this really generic widespread Marxist analysis on things, which listening to some of his analysis, no he doesn't. But then it dovetails into intersectionality, whereas if you listen to young white voices, especially men, you should know that intersectionality seems to be a common thing that is brought up by them quite a lot as the thing that they hate. Unless, of course, they are typically university educated, in which case they seem to basically like to politically slit their own wrists, for lack of a better term.
I'll be like, look, if you feel bad getting, $4 an hour and surviving exclusively on tips, which is how in a lot of places in America, the service industry is how it still operates. A foreign concept for the UK, I presume, but
not really. We still tip over here. I've never had a service industry job. I've only ever worked retail and then into software, so I've never actually worked a tipping job, but As far as I'm aware, quite a lot of people did actually rely on tips, as do most Western countries, as far as I'm aware. I think over in the East it's kind of rude because it's saying, oh, I don't think your employer is paying you enough, but over here we don't have that issue.
If you feel like that's terrible for you, working in retail, people are yelling at you every day, your treatment from your manager, there's a reason for that. It's because the system is designed in a way to make sure that you have no way of ever getting adequately paid for your labor.
Yep, here we go. This is where we need to go Jordan Peterson on his ass. It's the system. It's all to do with the system. It's all external forces. No, it's not. It's not at all. I worked in retail for 2 years. I didn't particularly like the job. I did it because I needed the money, and it was something to do in the mornings, I suppose. I worked part-time there, and then about a year in, I was like, I can't keep going on like this. So I worked as a part-time intern, working for a software development company to learn the basics of software development. Long story short, I do a year of that. I managed to get a graduate scheme in software development, and I'm now being paid double what I was being paid for 20 hours a week in retail. In fact, I'm probably being paid more than double. And not only that, but now I've been doing that for a few years, big doors are opening to work completely remotely as a software developer for a load of companies around the UK, with money that is more than I'm on now. So the system, as he says it's designed to make sure that you don't get paid for your labour. No, you are being paid for your labour. You agreed to that much money for that much work, and that is what you do, and that is what you get paid for what you do. If you want to earn more, get a better job. Do what I did. You know, okay, it sucked to be an intern, an unpaid intern for a year for 25 hours of my week, but you know what? It was worth it in the end, because now I'm working 35-hour weeks for a lot more, for a job I find much easier and a lot more fulfilling. It's not easy. I do understand that, but just because something's easy doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And it also doesn't mean that you can blame external factors on these things, when really it's up to you to do better.
And that you have no mechanism of fighting back against that. And on top of that, if you feel this way, then imagine how, I don't know, like a person who has been historically marginalized feels.
I love it, but well, not everyone, obviously, because as I keep saying, I couldn't be hired by the BBC. But as a general rule, in America, in the UK, in most of the West, you can work towards whatever goal you want as a career. Just because you have a job doesn't mean you deserve a house. And don't get me wrong, I know the housing market's completely wonky around the West, and people don't like me saying it, but building more would actually help. And yes, I know the immigration argument, and yes, I do agree with it, but it's pointless to say because it's not going to make as much of a dent as you think. But that's getting off topic. But I'm still looking around for houses, and I'm probably going to have to get something that is below the standard I wanted, for more money than it's probably worth, but hey, I'd rather have a house than stay at my parents' forever. And you know, can I do a lot about it systemically or within the system? Most I can probably do is keep writing to my MP and keep voting in MPs who are going to help the problem rather than hinder it. And having a slightly deeper understanding of it, rather than just voting for someone who's going to give me a free council house, I've decided that I'm going to vote for someone who is going to let the market run the way it should. But this is the problem with people like Hasan Piker. They don't have these deeper understandings. They will just read things that they already agree with, not think critically about it, and then just keep saying more free stuff, please, even though he's one of the richest men in the world. And it annoys me, but it's popular, because all he's doing is playing into people's grievances. And this is the same reason that Jordan Peterson was popular, ironically, because they do actually know what the problems are, because they are listening to people. It's just Jordan Peterson's answers I personally feel are a lot more fulfilling and meaningful than Hasan's, which is just, oh, you can't do anything, just, organise, do these really, really ridiculous suggestions where no one's going to stand up to the man who is a fan of Hasan Piker. They're just going to sit in their rooms, keep doing their jobs and keep listening to Hasan. Whereas Jordan Peterson and people like me who have listened to him get off their asses and try and improve their lives, and because of that, I'm now in a position where I have a loving relationship that I'm putting effort into, and I'm putting effort into for the future. I don't think I could have done that without Jordan Peterson's advice. I genuinely mean that.
But as far as like white man goes, I'm pretty privileged. I'm cishet, white dude.
You're Turkish. You're Turkish, though. I mean,
I am, but in America, I'm white. You know what I mean?
But if the shit hits the fan, you're racialized as non-white, presumably.
Yeah, of course.
If,
but that's how whiteness is as a concept. Of course,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love it. When the S hits the fan, what Haryan Bastani means is when there's a race war, which I just cannot see happening. But it's this thing about race, again, these racial categories, they're just mad. Because it goes from being categorised as white, and then he says, oh, the concept of whiteness, that doesn't, my skin colour doesn't actually matter with that. It's this really weird racial essentialism where if you act like you are a wasp, you must be white. Incredible scenes.
But as it stands, I look pretty white.
Yeah.
So I can speak to people in a way that they will, in a way that unfortunately I am the type of person that they will listen to rather than someone who is like from said marginalized groups. Like,
he really just doesn't concentrate on modern politics at all. There are plenty of political commentators who are on the right wing and even the left wing aren't white, aren't men, and that plenty of people listen to with their takes, with their commentary, with their advice. He's just making this up. Yeah, there are some leftists that only listen to me because I'm white. No, Hasan, find me one person that only listens to you because you're white.
So for people watching this and not familiar with your work, they might be thinking, why is this guy a big deal?
It's genuinely a question I ask every time I'm reminded of him.
The statistics and the data from your coverage of the 2020 presidential election are incredible. So this is from, I think, NY Mag, or the NY Times, one of the two. It's from New York. Piker's stream covering the results of the 2020 United States presidential election peaked at 230,000 concurrent viewers and was the sixth most watched source of election coverage across YouTube and Twitch, comprising 4.9% of the market share. And I think it was also the sixth most watched election stream just on the internet.
These are statistics who, as a YouTuber, do make my eyes water. I would kill for any of my videos to do with election coverage to even reach 1,000 views. I'm pretty happy with videos that make that. And I saw some of Hasan's clips from the presidential coverage. I don't understand why he's such a big deal. Please answer this question. Please answer why you think you're so big.
Did you think that was going to happen? And like, how quickly has this success jumped on you? Because I read somewhere that your first Twitch stream got 35 viewers.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you went in both feet, $500,000 saying we're going to launch brand, Hasan Abi. You grew this organically, and then you got to that.
I really wouldn't say he grew organically. He grew because he was on The Young Turks, and the only reason he got a job there was because his uncle ran the damn thing. But also, people weren't watching his original streams because all he basically did was play games like Fortnite, and people wanted to go to him from The Young Turks to hear what he had to say. Because you go to The Young Turks not for gaming content, you go for political takes and all this. So as soon as he started doing that, that's when his Twitch started exploding a bit, and he gets more average viewers than any other average just chatting stream. And then obviously it explodes, and the reasoning behind that I can't really tell you properly.
Did you expect that?
no, absolutely not. I had no idea it was going to be this successful. I always thought I'll be like a mid-tier content creator, not one of the largest content creators on this platform, because it was not a platform. It was a platform that was like straight up hostile to politics, and especially left-wing politics.
Okay, for Twitch, they are hostile, or were hostile to politics in general, yes. They did just want to be a gaming platform. To say that they are straight up hostile to left-wing creators is ridiculous. Patently ridiculous, given their history of banning people like Bastani, who's not even a properly right-wing. They cracked down hard on hate speech and things like that, which was just another way to try and get right-wingers off, because, you say you want less immigration, that's racist, get off Twitch. Patently ridiculous he said that, but he is right. He probably didn't realise how big he was going to get, because why would anyone think that Hasan was going to be successful on Twitch?
People were desperately looking for someone who looks like them, thinks like them, understands the internet, and can maneuver through the media landscape.
See, that's not really been my experience. Quite a lot of the popular people I know on YouTube, they've never actually, or they very rarely show their face anyway. I mean, barely anyone's seen my face anyway. And yeah, I still got a fairly decent amount of subscribers. I get consistent views from my videos and things like that. And I know for a fair bit of my audience is female. Not an awful lot, 'cause it's YouTube, but I know females do watch me. So it's very strange to me that you would say, people just want to listen to people who look like them. I don't think that's true. I think it matters a lot more what people have to say, especially when they can't see my face. So maybe it's different if I was on Facecam.
And I got lucky. But such is just the way.
Well, yeah, at least he's got the self-awareness to admit that he did just get lucky. So at least he's not all bad.
Would you host a show on MSNBC? Would you do a podcast on the New York Times?
The only thing I see as beneficial to myself, with respect to like working in legacy media, it gives you legitimacy in traditional outlets, so people will be more susceptible to listen to you, and definitely different demographics.
Yeah, so I made a load of cuts there because there was a lot of thinking time for Hasan. And, you know, a bit I cut out, he mentions that he was actually offered places on legacy media. And as he says, you can see the benefit of it, so why didn't he do it?
Other than that, the lack of editorial control, the freedom that I have to say whatever I want, which sometimes happens to get me in trouble, is undefeated.
I like how he wants the freedom to say that America deserved 9/11, and he knows he can't get away with that when speaking to all the demographics. Which is where I'm kind of happy he is just big on Twitch, because it does show that he is only popular with younger demographics. The problem is that obviously they can vote, and he's influencing all these voters to vote for parties that are fine with him saying that America deserved 9/11, just like a lot of, well, not a lot of, but just like the radical Democrats like AOC and the rest of the squad, who have actually played games with Hasan Piker, which really should be career enders, but this is how ridiculous the Democrats are these days.
I'm not going to throw that away for probably not even more money than I make at the moment. So
there it is. The socialist is finally letting his greed get to him. What I love as well is that he says, oh, basically I don't do it for money, because the money matters to him more than the getting his message out. He's not a political activist. The man's just a grifter. And I do mean that. This is him admitting that he's a grifter.
Is there no conditions under which a major media company could come to you and say, Hasan, we've got this product, come work with us? Are there no conditions? And forget money, obviously. If they say, here's $100 million, you're like, okay, fine, I can give 9/10 of it away and still be, incredibly wealthy, whatever.
Imagine thinking that Hasan Piker would ever give any of his money away. How little research did you do into Hasan Piker, Aaron? This was a massive thing for ages about his house.
But
yeah.
But professionally and politically.
Oh my god, I love it. Even Hasan Piker's going, yeah, I give money away. No, you don't. Don't even give me that.
Like if, I don't know, MSNBC said we want you to host like a 2-hour show daily. You can have who you want on, talk about what you like. Obviously, your politics are very different to like.
I just don't think that that'll ever happen.
Right.
Okay, interesting. Why wouldn't you want your message out to more people and demographics that you can't capture on Twitch? I would kill for a slot on BBC or GB News or something like that.
I have no belief that MSNBC, which only recently decided they need to be less partial, and what that means is like they need to be more right wing.
In what way are MSNBC right wing at all? They've noticed they're losing viewers because they're being incredibly partially leftist. Upon what planet have they been too right wing? Upon what planet do they have a right wing audience? Come on, Hasan, think.
Is ever going to be like, let's hire someone who calls themselves a socialist.
Hell's he talking about? Lawrence O'Donnell still works for MSNBC, and he called himself a socialist back in 2010, and as far as I'm concerned, he's never gone back on that word. So MSNBC do actually host socialists on their news programs and their opinion pieces. I don't know what he's talking about.
British media is incredibly reactionary and awful.
What, you talking about the BBC? Because I doubt you know what GB News is.
But American media is pretty brutal too, especially when there's even a crumb of like social democracy.
Oh, he's probably basing it on the one time that Jeremy Corbyn was on BBC and they put him in a Russian hat with red filter over the picture. The thing is, if Corbyn didn't have the baggage that he had from being basically a friend to every enemy the Brits have had since time began, you probably wouldn't see that. You'd probably see the BBC actually being supportive of it. Because they can only be anti-British to such a degree. They obviously can't have someone on who's been supporting the IRA, Hamas, other terrorist organisations against Britain and not address it in any way. That would be ridiculous. But apart from that, I have no idea why he's calling the British media reactionary.
Like Bernie Sanders, his treatment, or rather his mistreatment in liberal media, liberal left media, is I think proof that they are positioned in a way to shut off any sort of left-wing momentum in this country and serve capital.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back to Bernie Sanders' treatment, and he is probably right, because Bernie Sanders was for dismantling the state quite a bit, even though at the same time he wanted it expanded to put money into the states to allow it to become at the very least a social democracy, but he did want socialism. So, you know, alright, maybe fair enough, but when it came to Corbyn, I mean, I'm thinking back to, especially when he wanted the internet communism, people were calling it that because that's what the Tories called it. And it just stuck because it was a pretty good description of what Corbyn wanted. He wanted everyone to have access to the internet via state funding, despite the fact that basically every household already has fibre optics. Like, it's only in really remote places, probably in the most northerly part of Scotland, where you can't get good fibre optics. But even that I wouldn't call unfair treatment. I don't think Corbyn was unfairly treated by the media. I think he got exactly what can be expected from someone who is completely on the side of Britain's enemies throughout his life. The man just had baggage, and to think that he didn't, you are just ridiculous. I mean, I still see people today. I know people today that voted against Corbyn because of the quote-unquote lies told about him, and now they've gone back and said, oh, I wish I didn't believe those lies, we'd be in a better state. And these are probably the type of people that would like Hasan Piker. But really all these people are doing, as far as I'm aware, is listening to other idiots in the civil service. Yes, these are my classic civil servant friends. But anyway, that's going to be the end of part 1. I didn't actually think this would take me to nearly an hour, but here we are. I've got through maybe a third of the interview, maybe a bit less, but these parts are going to come out whenever they're done. I might have time for another this week, I don't know. But anyway, tonight I'm on the Wellington Project doing another The Other Side of the Hill newscast. You will see the announcement on this channel in the form of a short video. Please do go over there and get involved. It should be a good time. It's like the classic newscasts I did twice on this channel that people seem to like. But in the meantime, that's everything I had for you today. So as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.